from the production studios of Epic Financial Strategies here in Red Bank, New Jersey. We are Infinity X, giving a stage and microphone to human excellence in the pursuit of creating infinite sales opportunities by merging ecosystems and by speaking with mega powers. And by the way, folks, this is a repeat performance. The one and only Susan Sly is joining us. What's up, Susan? How are you tonight?
Well, hey, David, it's so great to be here. It's great to see everyone. And I want to acknowledge all the people who are here live because why? You want more. Your 2022 is maybe where you want it to be. It's not quite where you want to be, but I'm always honored to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Well, listen, the demand was super high, Susan, and you absolutely rocked the mic last time. And what have you been up to? What's 2022 been looking like for you?
I'm going to jump right in. So I decided this year, David, that I wanted to accomplish so much in January and February that it would set me up for the rest of the year.
Ooh,
And so, really thinking about what that looks like, because when you consider that 92% of people don't even achieve one New Year's resolution, right? And I've always front end loaded my week, so I like to get more done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so I can not necessarily cruise Thursday and Friday, but be more responsive. Even at Radius AI, the company I co-founded and co-CEO and board member, we don't do meetings Thursdays and Fridays. So we really busted out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday so that we can just be, in that catch up mode and so on. And so I said, what if instead of just doing it for the week, David, I start to do it for the year. So here's what I've been up to. And it's a long list. So I just recorded a new Learn on Demand course. And as many of you know, I'm a student at MIT. So I want to do something, not just your typical someone records on Zoom and puts out a course and charges like $500. I had it professionally recorded. It is an MIT style course, how to go from employee to entrepreneur. And it's for the people out there who are saying, you know what, I'm a mortgage broker, I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'm a teacher. How do I actually start a business? So we're covering ideation, we're covering accounting, we're calling it all of that stuff. So that's going to go live in March. So that's just one of the things I'm doing. On top of that, at Radius, we're growing. We're in the process of hiring 32 people. I just got asked to speak in the NVIDIA GTX conference, which is the largest conference in the world for AI developers. And ask me how much code I write, David, like nothing. We put our house on the market. Right now we're sitting on multiple offers. So as soon as I'm done this, I'm going to be choosing one and a backup offer. So I just said, I looked at my results from 2021 and I sat there and I want everyone to ask themselves this question. Would Susan a year ago, December 2020, be proud of where Susan 2021 ended up? And I looked at it and I thought in some areas, yes. And in some areas, I graded myself as underperform. And I said, no freaking way. I am going to be by the end of February. I am going to set myself up for the whole year. In the morning, I'm getting on a plane. I'll be up at 3 a.m., pray, meditate, get on the Peloton. I have a 6 a.m. meeting. I have a 7 a.m. flight to Miami. I'm going to Miami. I'm doing a partnership with Jared Yellen and Grant Cardone. I'm launching a tech incubator for women. It's on. That's all I have to say. So that was a big answer, but yeah.
We are Infinity X, folks. This is Susan Sly, and her 2022 has gotten off to a bang and then some. I mean, that's incredible. If you have a question for Susan, please put it into the chat. Susan, let's dissect a little bit more around the educational content. So you're focusing on a lot of different verticals, and it sounds like it's multifaceted for just about any entrepreneur. Can you give us a little bit of a sneak preview as to what people could expect if they purchase the content?
Yeah, so this statistic really upset me, and it was 61% of Americans, David, want to start businesses. 92% of them never do.
Oh my God. Is that right? So 61% of Americans want to start a business and 92% never take it.
Never do. And so when I started to look at why they weren't starting businesses, and for all of you watching live, that's why I love Infinity X because it's the name of my show is Raw and Real, and David, I have to get you on the show because you guys don't hold back. So let's dissect it. So the number one reason people don't start a business is not lack of confidence, it's lack of know-how.
Yep, that's right.
And there are a lot of amazing books out there and a lot of amazing trainings. It's like, just do it, just start it. But people are like, well, how do I really do this? So as someone who started many businesses, scaled many businesses, Radius now has a 9-figure valuation. So we went from idea on a napkin in 2017 to where we're at today. And to look at it and say, well, what are those beginning steps? And then how do we protect ourselves? How do we build that solid foundation? So I take people through their ideation. How do you find that idea that's going to resonate, right? And one of the things I say is that first idea might not be your dream business. So when people are saying, hey, David, go start your dream business, and let's say you've never been in business before, your first business might be your trial business. And that's why I love a lot of low risk businesses. I take people through risk profiles, right? And I'm not here to sell anyone on anything. You can ask me any question. You can even, say, what kind of mood did you wake up in? Or, what's your greatest fear? I don't care. I'm an open book. But one of the things I always look at is risk profile. So when I see Trina or Justin or Cassie, I might go, they want to start a business. What's their risk profile? So people who have a low risk profile, usually it means they don't have a lot of experience as entrepreneurs and they maybe don't have a lot of startup capital. So there's a basket of businesses that can be started there. And then the next one is, I have some experience, I don't have startup capital, or I have a lot of experience, I have some startup capital. You should take a look at your risk profile before embarking on any business, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And risk profile, in our world is so underappreciated, Susan, because I have conversations literally each and every single day with people who have absolutely no idea what type of investor that they are, right? They've never taken the time to define what their investment philosophy is, what their appetite is for taking on risk, what is risk, right? And, whether it's losing buying power on their money or whether it's, putting into crypto or investments or whatever the case is. When you're looking at an entrepreneur and you're doing a risk assessment on starting a business, what are some key indicators that, are either red flags or are things that people aren't taking into consideration when they're assessing the risk of starting a business?
For sure. And David, you have to promise me, the last time I was here, we were talking crypto. We need to talk crypto, NFTs, and blockchain. So I just want to say, I'd love to get back to that. So, here are some things that are tangibles, and then there are psychological aspects. So starting with the psychological aspects, do you have support at home? Do you really understand how to manage yourself in time? Time management isn't about, I show up at this time, I do this at this time. Do I have the self-discipline to manage myself in time? And let's be honest, as entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs, there was an article written in Forbes about how many hours an entrepreneur actually works. Compared to an employee, the base minimum for an entrepreneur is 56.6 hours a week. So if you're that person who's like, oh, I just can't wait until 5 o'clock so I can go to happy hour, you might not be a good entrepreneur because that's not real. As I said, I have a 6 a.m. on camera Zoom meeting for a negotiation that I'm in the middle of, right? And that's just what entrepreneurs do. At 9 o'clock tonight, and I'm in Mountain Time, so 11 o'clock Eastern, we have a sync up because we're preparing for this 6 a.m. meeting. And as I said, I'll get up at 3 in the morning. So are you emotionally prepared to be an entrepreneur? And we hear about, what is that why? We are seeing millions and millions of people. I'm doing a speaking event with Henry DeVries, who's one of the top Forbes columnists, coming up in, I think it's next week. And I'm talking about the Great Resignation, and I have a maverick opinion on it. So 74.3% of Americans say, I don't like my job. We've never seen this level before, combined with this level of inflation, combined with, tangible and intangible uncertainty. And then, so David, you look at that, here's my maverick opinion. People have started to work at home and they like it.
Yeah.
And it's not going to change. And so what we're seeing is millions and millions of people who say, I want to start a business, whether I want to work at home, or I want to be my own boss. I want a degree of freedom, but they lack, because they're so used to being employees, they lack the psychological armament of how to be an entrepreneur. The second thing, going back to those tangibles, as I said, do you understand how to incorporate yourself, what an NDA is? Do you know, how to set yourself up with a proper corporate structure? And a lot of people don't. 50% of businesses fail, but get this, 90% of tech startups fail. So 50% of like everyday businesses, but 90% of tech startups fail. And I'm a tech investor, right? So being able to assess risk is something really important to me.
And from a risk perspective, I mean, Susan, the last time that we talked, inflation was nowhere near where it is in the United States today. And there's chirping about, is the Fed going to raise rates? I think that ultimately they're probably going to have to, but I think it's going to be, personally, I think it's going to be measured, right? Because I don't think that they want the economic trickle down of being too overly aggressive with rate increases, but tech has the tendency to not love interest rate increases, right? And so defensive position, that's another risk that you have to take into consideration, right? And what's the buzz in your industry and in the tech space around what's happening inflation and rate wise?
That is such a great question, right? So, and we're seeing, I think the speculation today on CNBC was, for those of you who don't know, one of my things, my habits I like to do is like, if I can combine two things and get a lot done, I do. So I do weight training, watching CNBC in my home office. That's like after I've done my cardio, I'm in my home office doing weights, watching CNBC. And anyway, so from that perspective, we're looking at some different things at a time that we've never experienced before. So we have artificial intelligence, which is my sector, that has built algorithms that are so predictive. However, the predictive algorithms, it's hard to take into account a Russian invasion in Ukraine, or as of today, a partial Russian invasion in Ukraine. And then the fact that Putin, I believe, supplies, I'm going to get this wrong, it's, over 6% of oil to Europe, right? So then on top of it, supply chain issues and a potential $120 a barrel for oil in the US. We've already seen significant increases. It's, people are like, oh, in Q1, the supply chain's going to open up. I'm like, no, it's not. It's going to be at least 18 months, right? So your question is around tech. So there's a couple things that are really interesting that are happening in technology. And I'm going to preface this by saying, because I know you love these conversations, David, I was at the National Retail Federation big show in January. And this is a stat that came out. Over 50% of American children asked for digital products, not real products, this past Christmas. They didn't ask for Barbies. They didn't ask for Lego. They wanted digital products. So technology has the ability to circumvent supply chain issues from the direct to consumer space. The ability to produce the tech, like in my industry, server procurement and all sorts of different things like that, that is bottlenecked. But once you have that foundation and you can start to deliver those products directly, and the margins are massive. So if I had to make a prediction in terms of this year and going back to, will the Fed raise rates in March or not? I think a lot of that hinges on what happens with Russia and the Ukraine, because how much can Americans bear when your fuel is almost doubled, your broccoli is, 30% more, all of those things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, folks, we're on Infinity X. Replay on weareinfinityx.com. We are Infinity X YouTube. Suze, we have a question that came in from Teresa. And said, your comment on your comment on psychological armor, does that align with getting a culture temperature of psychological safety in workplaces? And what does that look like as an entrepreneur? I guess that's the first question.
Trina, that is such a great question. I hope I am reading to this question correctly, right? So if if we step back for a minute, and I love this question, and Trina, if I am messing up what you're asking, please tell me. But I want to step back for a minute. As an employee, there's a certain expectation from psychological armor that your employer is supposed to protect you. Suddenly, as an entrepreneur, that is now gone. And from a psychological risk level, so now you're potentially dealing with hiring people that might sue you directly, not the company. You're dealing with things like, I have a friend of mine, and she's doing a nutritional company. She's a doctor, but her first language isn't English. And so she's getting all the labels done, and she didn't even realize, David, that some of the things she was saying on her labels were not FDA compliant. No one had told her. The marketing people didn't tell her that she paid them all this money. Like, no one told her. And so suddenly she's gone from a zone of safety, let's call it, to this zone of unknown where she's putting herself out there, and there's a tremendous amount of risk. So one of the things about Trina's psychological armor is that an entrepreneur, your armor is going to have to be a lot stronger. And I have a lot of wall kicking moments. And I want to talk about those for a minute. So the more seasoned you become as an entrepreneur, it's almost like you've had this checklist of a whole bunch of crappy stuff you've had to deal with. People quitting, people, being nasty, people returning your product, your ideas, spending a ton of money on ideation, and then something doesn't work. And once you go through that a few times, your armor becomes stronger because you have that experience, right? And as an employee, as I said, there's someone you're expecting to protect you. And that's where we see, this trend right now, David, in workplace and large companies bringing in life coaches, chief wellness officers, all of those things. Even at Radius, we do Wellness Wednesdays once a month, and the March topic is, maximum wellness, minimal time. So if you only have a small amount of time, and we're seeing more companies paying attention to the mental health because the employees were disappointed that they weren't having what they perceived as protection, especially during something that was as emotionally intense as the pandemic.
Incredible. We are Infinity X. And Trina, I hope that answers your question. If you have more questions for Susan, listen, guys, this is as high level education as you're going to get in the entrepreneurial space. So please keep them coming. Trina, I'll hit your question there in a moment. We got a great big thank you, but let's pivot because I'm dying to hear it. So Susan, every single day, right? I'm having conversations about folks that are looking to dip their toes into the waters on the crypto space, right? And we've seen a ton of volatility, new coins coming out, NFTs, et cetera. But what's happening in that market? There's a lot of volatility, hard to predict fundamentals. Like, what are you seeing? What are you seeing in that space? What's special about it? Why does that belong in people's worlds?
I love this question. So let's talk about any new technology, right? So back in 1995, less than 5% of the world had access to the internet, right? And now today, I think it would be safe to say it's around 95%. But we often, as human beings, have a high degree of impatience. So we say, "Oh, this technology is here. Why isn't my Shiba Inu worth 10 cents a coin right now? When I bought it for why aren't I a Shiba billionaire or whatever the case is?" The reality is that we have to look at the phases of technological adoption. So I'm going to borrow a little bit from my studies at MIT. So let's step back and take a breath, and I will disclose this. I do have crypto, but I am a buy and hold crypto person, and we'll talk about that. So generally speaking, when there's new technology, the first people to adopt it are the disruptors, the vanguards, the first, when you think about the first GoDaddy commercials.
Yeah.
Who were they tailored to? They were tailored to like 21-year-old dudes like eating pizza at 2 a.m. The girls were like, and my friend, she came in as their chief legal counsel and vice president and co-founder. And she's this very conservative Christian. She's like, what are we doing with these ads? But she would see how the traffic at 2 a.m. to buy domains. And when you think about who was buying domains back then,
It was people that were well, it was young people, right? It was younger people that were seeking out different methods. Correct me if I'm wrong, but younger people seeking out different methods of essentially inventing their own jobs or thinking about the value of that domain in the future, right?
so were they not staking a claim?
Yes. Yes. Exactly what.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
So then what began to happen is these young people started buying those domains, and then eventually business owners, small business owners, adopted that habit. And then we saw, larger corporations, and then even now celebrities, before they reveal the name of their baby, they will go, and people are like, why do you name your baby such crazy names? Because they're trying to get the .coms. Before I had all of my kids, for those of you who don't know, I had an online health coaching business on the internet in 95. I was like an OG internet marketer. And so before I had all of my children, I bought their domain names, and I own things like Susan Sly, Scam, and all those things. I own a bunch of iterations of my own name to protect myself. So it's no different. So the people buying crypto now, the people who are buying NFTs, maybe not Bored Apes for, $210,000, they're the same people that would have been buying domains. So we have these, let's call them the disruptive vanguards, right?
Yep.
And they started buying crypto, and they're buying NFTs, and they're producing NFTs. I just minted for my son a few weeks ago 3 of his pieces of art in NFTs and put them on OpenSea. So then now we're seeing businesses adopt this. And this is why when people say, oh, crypto is going to go away, is you have to understand the blockchain and what it is, and understand that the government, just like domains, right? The government got in there and started to regulate domains, and that had some good effects and bad effects. It's the same thing with cryptocurrency and the blockchain. So when you see a company like Ralph Lauren, and I saw the CEO of Ralph Lauren speak, and he was talking about their big metaverse play, especially with Roblox and doing capsule collections. And they have a Ralph Lauren cafe in Roblox where Gary and I can go and have coffee in the Ralph Lauren cafe, but none of us got caffeinated. Like, how weird is that? So I'm just going to riff off for a minute, and you can interrupt me any second. But so Ralph Lauren is reinvigorating a legacy brand in the metaverse. And the other thing I want everyone to understand, I did a post about the metaverse on my Instagram. This woman is like, oh, the metaverse, and she's riffing off against Mark Zuckerberg. And I'm like, honey, you're on Instagram. Get off Instagram. Mark Zuckerberg owns Instagram. Like, if you're so anti Mark Zuckerberg. But understand this, Mark Zuckerberg doesn't own the metaverse. One of the companies I invested in, and I am a board member on, is a company called Good Goods. And we're building a metaverse of good. It's called the Good Neighborhood. And so you get tokens and rewarded for doing good things in your real life, and you're rewarded in your good neighborhood metaverse life. So we're seeing large companies, another one, L'Oreal Cosmetics. So how many, have you are familiar with L'Oreal Cosmetics, right? You could just say me in the chat or put your thumb up or whatever. It's a legacy brand. L'Oreal Cosmetics, David, they have a director of metaverse technology responsible for creating digital twins of their products. And so what that looks like is, I have a L'Oreal mascara in the real world, and my metaverse L'Oreal mascara digital twin shoots flames out of my eyelashes. So one of the clients I consult to, they are a national retailer, and they're like, well, we want to get into the space. So I gave them an idea. I said, do a limited edition of XYZ of your product, and then the metaverse version, when people use it, that will do, they'll have this transformation in the metaverse. So we're seeing legacy brands using metaverse technologies driven by the blockchain and driven by cryptocurrency to invigorate legacy brands. then we're also seeing those vanguard disruptors, like I was talking about, who are minting their NFTs, putting their original pieces out on platforms like OpenSea. And so there's this, as I was talking about the last time I was here, this amazing shift in wealth. So big companies are adopting it. A significant percentage of Visa transactions rely on the SOL token, SOL. I own some of that, just as a full disclosure. So we see it in fintech. We are seeing the optimization in real estate transactions on the blockchain. Walmart announced that, it just filed for I think it was 7 patents for metaverse technology. And a year ago, none of us would be saying a legacy brand like Walmart is going to do a metaverse play. So it's here to stay. There are a lot of snake oil coins out there because basically anyone that's deregulated, they can go and create their own coin. But, we can talk about meme coins, we can talk about stable coins, but we're just in that early phase of adoption and people have to be patient.
Yeah, I mean, my God, is that interesting, though? I mean, there's so many different places that I could go with what you just put out there. There's questions all over the chat, by the way, Susan. 2 minutes, but so here's something that's really, really super interesting, right? So you mentioned major corporations, L'Oreal, Walmart, right? As they continue to look to expand, right? One of the things that they want to have attractive is their ability to create bonds, right? They're going to want to have continued inflow of capital so that they can deploy into different projects. And, with interest rates being as low as they've been for as long as they've been, bond investors are just, they're starving for yield, but they're not necessarily finding it, but they're constantly looking at companies that have high level tier 1 capital, right? So banks and corporations, they own boatloads of life insurance because that's tier 1 capital. That's attractive to me as a bond investor because I want to know that their debt is going to be something I'm going to get yield on. Do you see NFTs and cryptocurrency being looked at as tier 1 capital, right? For corporations to pick up? I mean, is that going to be a factor in people investing in these corporations and their debt, maybe potentially?
Every time we talk, I always feel smarter. My gosh, you ask the best questions. Like, oh, yeah. So, to answer your question, I think not for a while. And what does a while look like? So, if we had been talking, let's say prior to COVID, one of the things that, McKinsey came out with a study. They said by the year 2032, AI would displace, not replace, displace 800 million jobs globally. Okay? What happened was COVID compressed time because we suddenly had a global displaced workforce and AI was brought in to optimize that workforce. And everyone said, well, people are going to be out without jobs, but are we not in one of the lowest unemployment rates in America right now? So when you think about that, David, is crypto going to be a tier 1? I would say not yet for a while because it's so deregulated. So we have, and my hope, Sheep to the moon. I'm part of the Sheep army. Won't disclose how much of that I have, but where we have stable coins like say Bitcoin, right? And then we have Ethereum, which really, takes a lot of energy to produce. And then we have new coins like Sol, which, run on the Ethereum platform, not as labor intensive. And we're going to start to see in technology, there's something, some of you may be familiar with it, called Moore's Law. So Moore's Law essentially says this: as technology advances, the cost to produce it goes down while the efficiency goes up, right? So the same thing is true with cryptocurrency. But what we are seeing, and you know this just as well as anyone, that 2 years ago, you had single digit Americans with crypto in their retirement portfolio, and we have now hit double digits. So we're seeing the bigger investment firms saying, hey, you might want to hold some crypto, but you have to have the stomach for it, as I always say, because when you have Bitcoin swings that are $5,000-$6,000 in a day, you're probably better off, if you can't handle that, having like a Vanguard mutual fund.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's such a good access point for me, Susan, because I was talking to somebody a little bit earlier today who is a savvy crypto trader, right? And he does staking, and he's doing really, really strong things in that space. But to your point, he has the ability to handle the swings and the momentum and everything. I remember when I first broke into the business, it was 1999. We were at the height of the tech bubble, and you had the irrational exuberance, right? But you also had people that did not understand technology, didn't understand options or any of those, the level of risk associated, right, with investing into startup companies, right, or using option trading. Forget about buying options to hedge. They were buying options because they wanted to, gain capital, and they had no idea about what the risk or the downside looked like from a discipline perspective. And that's when you started to really see the emergence of institutional money management really coming into play. Separately managed accounts, SMAs, now the rise of the RIA and the fee-based platform. Do you see a fee-based platform really becoming a staple in the American investment world in the crypto space? Do you see there being like a rise of, I don't know whether they're hedge funds or just or money management firms that are going to offer those crypto disciplines?
Yes, 100%. When we look at crazy valuations, so when Coinbase debuted last year, it debuted at a valuation close to $100 billion. And people have to understand that in the tech world, $100 billion for a valuation is still significantly high, especially for an IPO. Now, Coinbase, of course, has very high transactional fees, and competition in anything is going to drive down fees. It just is. Right now, you have different ways in which you can trade crypto. However, as regulation doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, right? I was talking to Dr. Susan Leoto. She heads the AI governance committee for Stanford University. Regulation can be a good thing. And I'm going to be very candid. I am not in favor of big government. I don't think it works. It just doesn't. I'm just going to throw that out there. But regulation can be a good thing when we're talking about the allowance of things like, say, a Vanguard to say, hey, you know what? We are going to have a crypto mutual fund, and it's going to have low yield, and you're going to pay like 0.5% management fee, and we'll have a basket of crypto in there. We're just not quite there yet from a regulatory standpoint. And then we also have the global influence. So whether you like globalization or not, the internet facilitated a degree of globalization. So when China says we're not going to allow Bitcoin mining, the price of Bitcoin goes down, even though China's on the other side of the world.
Right.
So I think if I had to predict where we are in the infancy of this, again, I go back to the .coms, right? So for the more low risk investor, I think you've still got, not that long, maybe 18 to 24 months where you're going to have more vehicles available to invest in. But one of the questions that Gary asked was about things like Decentraland, right?
Yep,
And I want to talk about that for a minute, because this whole metaverse concept, really and truly, the last time I was here, I was talking about Mark Zuckerberg and the metaverse, right? And the fact that he renames his parent company Meta. So one of the things we have to understand is that whoever really controls the most servers at the end of the day in something like this wins. Because if these platforms are reliant on any cloud compute of their own or any sort of processing power of their own, it's going to be very hard to compete. So where Mark Zuckerberg really has he has an ability to be first to market with a true metaverse experience is because they have so much money. To your point, they're sitting on so much capital, they can invest it. They're concerned about potential massive increases in corporate tax rates. And so a lot of companies, what they're doing right now is they're like, we have a ton of cash to spend. We're either going to invest in companies, we're going to invest in infrastructure, we're going to do something because we don't want to just pay it in taxes. So now's the time. So Mark Zuckerberg is building what I believe is the largest, data server farm essentially in the world. And his, I happen to know a little bit about what the plans are, but I want to envision the way we'll be doing meetings. So Infinity X in the metaverse, David and I are there together, and we'll have some avatar capability. So we'll still look like ourselves, but I might have the eyelashes that, shoot the flames. And David might have I don't know, you might have some crazy hair that's just I don't know,
It won't be gray anymore, right?
It'll be like Dave Grohl's hair, and you'll be like, yeah, this is really cool. And we'll be sitting in this room, but we'll be wearing glasses to get in there, right? And for the time being. So lands like Decentraland are still 2D to a certain extent. If you go on the Decentraland website and you go to buy land, you're just looking at a little square on a grid. You're not looking at a full 3D rendering. This technology, because there are many use cases for it, I just had dinner with Dr. Brenda and Dr. Mark Wiederhold over the weekend when I was in La Jolla. They are two of the top VR scientists in the United States of America. So they're using this technology for PTSD for soldiers. They're using it to treat depression. They're using it to treat addiction. The use cases beyond gaming and fun and to shoot flames out of our eyelashes, the use cases are so tremendous. And some of the startups that I'm going to be putting through my incubator will definitely be focused on metaverse technology. So
incredible. Oh my God. This is like, you're getting a PhD in not only crypto but I mean, Susan, I can't even you're a mega power. It's unbelievable. This has been so spectacular. Now I do have another question for you before we hit any other questions. We are Infinity X, by the way, replay on weareinfinityx.com. We are Infinity X YouTube. Another piece of the conversation I was having with that client today, Susan, centered around growth rates, right? Because I mean, if you do invest wisely, right, well, just like with anything else, you're going to grow a net worth, right? And as you continue to scale, there's opportunity to, over time, become a millionaire multiple times over, right? We're probably going to have more billionaires in the next 20 years than we've ever had in the history of mankind. Yeah. And we have a United States federal government that has a debt to GDP right now of 125%. We're going to be at a $50 trillion deficit by 2025. And, our largest cost items are still going to remain constant, right? Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and civil defense. It's, to me, and I'm not a predictor of it, I'm not an accountant, but it screams tax reform. You'd mentioned corporate tax rates, right? And how are people going to, well, I guess it's a two-part question. Number one is how do people need to get themselves prepared for the inclusion of their crypto holdings in their estates, right, for taxation? But then number two, what do you, from a governmental perspective, is the IRS going to double down on trying to figure out ways where they can annualize tax this?
Yes. Yes and yes. So we saw in Canada, as an example, where I'm originally from, back when I believe it was Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, he instituted a national sales tax, and everyone was up in arms. But he ran on the platform that he was going to, balance the budget and get rid of the deficit. And Canada actually, for a short period of time, did go into a very positive place. We have some very big problems that are going to, and I'm not, a psychic by any stretch of the imagination, but if I was just looking at some economic factors, I'm going to riff off on I'll list them, and then to David's point, and then we'll talk about the practical things to do. So wealth, number one, is a personal definition. And I know, David, that's what you talk about. To some people, making, $100,000 a year and having a paid off $350,000 house, and they feel wealthy, and they should, right? That most people don't have a paid off house. Most people retire into poverty, and they don't have enough retirement savings to go beyond 2 years. So you've got this whole concept of, number one, you have to decide what wealthy is for you. And number two, then you have to have a very solid plan. And what most people's plans do not include are things like pandemics, hyperinflation, and war, right?
Exactly.
But David, you and I are old enough to know this isn't the first pandemic. This isn't the first threat of an invasion. And, this isn't the first round of inflation. I used to have one of my retirement investments was a laddered, I can't remember what it was called in Canada, but it was just this laddered approach where I bought essentially, think of it like bonds. It was like a bond ladder, but because interest rates were so high, it was like one would cash out at 7.5%, then 8.5%, then 9.5%. And this is like so smart, right, with the money. But we're going to see this continue. Then on top of it, the government has to raise taxes. In the United States, if they choose to do a national sales tax, that, at this point would probably be better than saying, hey, we're going to penalize the entrepreneurs, because when you start to raise taxes on businesses, the first thing the businesses do historically is lay off people. And so right now, if you're looking at through the optic, we have, very low unemployment, but we're going to start to raise taxes. That is going to shift. And then if inflation remains the way it is, you're going to have a bunch of people who are out of a job and can't afford to buy food. And that could very realistically happen, because this inflation isn't just affecting consumers, it's affecting businesses. And what people do during times of hyperinflation, they switch from using brand names to generic brands. And that affects those workers who work in those companies. They decide, oh, you know what? I'm not going to go to a restaurant. I'm going to cook at home. We're starting to see that. So here are some tips. Number one, work with your financial planner and start to look at your portfolio. So I'll just full disclosure, one of the stocks I bought this morning was Dollar General. So in the last recession, when I was living in Canada, we have a dollar chain store there, might be called the Dollar Store. So I bought a bunch of that stock, right? And Walmart stock, Target stock. Again, I'm not telling you guys what to buy. I'm just telling you what I did last time. Always sitting on cash, right? So sitting on as much cash as possible, buying opportunities. So when the market dipped in 2020, I went in and I bought a lot of stock. I was like, it's like a sale. Oh my gosh. I'm just like buying. My husband's looking at me. He's like, why are you so happy? I'm like, I'm on a shopping spree. He's like, we're all in lockdown. I'm like, I'm buying stocks, babe. So you want to sit on cash, and then you want to work your behind off. So this is not the time to coast. This is the time to have your job and a side hustle, to be saving money, to invest it wisely, be smart. I've always had well over 75% of my portfolio in very conservative stocks. Apple is, full disclosure again, my biggest holding. I'm just a hold and hold on Apple, buy and hold more Apple. And then I have some more high risk stuff. I also have some Vanguard stuff and, different things like that. But these are the things you want to be doing. And to your point around crypto, if you, depending on the age you are, so I'm turning 50 this year. I'm not saying, oh, wow, crypto is my key to, my retirement. But I'm buying and holding it. right? But you want to be really right now, pay off all your debt, get multiple streams of income happening if possible. You want to start to really educate yourself on investing and not get caught up with the trends. Just because your friends are all buying the latest meme coin doesn't mean you should. When with meme coins, I look at things like this. So with Shiba, right? So looking at Sheep and saying, hey, the CEO of AMC says we're going to take Sheep. Then you see, people like Mark Cuban saying, hey, we're going to start to entertain taking things like Sheep and Doge at our games and stuff like that to buy merch, which has, high margins on it. So I'm not just going with the trend. I'm doing it from a place of educating myself. And that's the thing I want to tell all of you, because 1 year from today, David and I could be here. This world could be an entirely different place. We may see inflation keep going. We may see unemployment in double digits. We may see people's savings wiped out because of market crashes. What if China invades Taiwan?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, and folks, to that point, I want to drive that home a little bit further. I've been a financial planner for 23 years. There has literally never been a stronger case for having good financial advisory and a sound plan and an investment philosophy and a roadmap, but also a dissection on your exposure to risk, because risk is literally everywhere right now, all around us. Inflation, tax reform, right? Poor investment choices, right? Because look, markets always not always, but history has shown that markets outperform investors because we make decisions based upon emotion. If you're not getting a second opinion on the decision making that you're doing, or just looking at what the outcomes could be, now there's never been a more important time ever. And right.
I feel like I just want to say amen to that, David, because, again, every time you and I speak, I always feel smarter because you're so bright and you've been a financial planner for so long. I'm also going to say something else. If you can afford to downsize your house right now, maybe is the time. If you don't need to be living in the city and you can, move somewhere else, and because you work from home, and take some good equity out, get out of debt, pay off your mortgage. I know some of you are like, oh, I've heard that all before, but are you doing it? Because again, David and I we don't have a crystal ball, but we can both tell you that 3 years ago, we weren't thinking it was going to be like it is, but look how it is.
Yep, absolutely. So, folks, we are Infinity X. We're giving a stage and microphone to human excellence. And tonight has probably been one of the most profound, dynamic conversations. Susan, you're a rock star. I just love the time that I get to spend with you. I get so much. The high-level education that you provided on blockchain and crypto tonight and the NFT space and the metaverse in general was second to none. And we're constantly, folks, trying to drive fantastic, real-time, relevant content, and it's just the tip of the iceberg of what you're going to see Susan Sly up to as we move forward here. Tonight was just absolutely, utterly incredible. Here's my question. So you've already accomplished, I'll let you leave the folks with this, Susan. You've already accomplished so much, and we're only 2 months into 2022. What does the remainder of 2022 look like for Susan Sly?
Oh, that's a great question. I think about myself at 60. So my 50th birthday, David, is September 25th this year.
That is impossible, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Nope. Child of 1972. It's true. So I think about myself at 60 and what do I do now to make my 60-year-old self proud? And so I created a vision for myself that is so huge. And I had started to write this vision every Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's. We're in Telluride. And so I'm writing this vision about my life. What's that?
Telluride is it's paradise. One of my favorite places in the world.
Yeah, me too. I love it. And so I've always been an advocate for women, and just so everyone's aware, only 2% of tech companies in the United States have at least one woman founder. So Radius, I am in that 2%, And so I said, what if I set a vision that is so crazy that I would help 1,000 women launch tech companies? And so to launch a tech company, I've written a line of code since 92. You don't have to be able to write code. There are people who can create your tech for you. What do you need to be able to do? You have to be able to ideate. You have to have the solid business foundation. You have to have people like David in your life so you don't do stupid. And then you also have to have that discipline to be an entrepreneur. So that's how I had written this down on paper, and some other crazy goals. I was just put them down. I always do a business plan for my life. And so it was really crazy because I had this guest on my show. He's like, you have to meet Jared Yellen. And then I'm on with Jared, and Jared's like, yeah, Grant and I have this vision to launch 10,000 tech companies in 10 years. And I'm like, dude, that is crazy. But I set this vision to launch 1,000 women-led tech companies. So that, one of the things I asked myself is that what do I need to do now to make that 10-year vision come true? And very few people, David, actually even have a 5-year vision. So I'm focused on a 10-year vision. So the rest of the year for me looks like this. We're going to continue to grow Radius. We're doing customer acquisition. We only do enterprise level customers. That's the bulk of our customers, generally, multi-billion-dollar enterprise companies. I am going to be launching my course. I'm going to be launching the incubator. I want to see for people to apply to the incubator, it's $49. Then they learn how to pitch. They do all of it. The accepted pitches, we mentor them up, and we teach them how to raise capital. I am a co-founder in your company. So my goal by the end of Q2 is to have 35 women launched in that incubator, mentoring them, getting them going. And then for my 50th birthday, I am hosting something called the Badass Women's Dinner. And it's going to be some of my girlfriends who have just done incredible things. Like Rebecca Zung is going to be there. Susan Brazier worked on the first Siri. My friend Christine Jones, who co-founded GoDaddy, like all these amazing women. And so I'm excited for the year, and I want to finish with this. Trina, I would love for you to apply. Just go to susansly.com because we don't have the application link live because I'm flying to Miami tomorrow. We're doing it. But the thing I want to finish with all of you from my heart. So yeah, David and I love to talk about interest rates and speculation and all those things because this is Infinity X. But infinity to me means your infinite potential. Your infinite potential. And I want to ask all of you, if you went back 10 years ago, would that person you were 10 years ago be proud of the person you are now in all of the areas of your life, in your health, your relationships, your spirituality, your finances? And if the answer is no, and there's one area where you're like, oh, they wouldn't be proud of me, I would say prioritize it, make it your year, go into March. Say to yourself, if I had to make March, whatever I do in March sets me up for the rest of this year, then just do it. You have that infinite potential. You can go 30 days on 16-hour days. You can't do it for a whole year, but you can do it for 30 days. You can do things now that, will make your future self proud and your past self proud. So that's what I want to say to all of you. And please let me know how your 2022 is going. I want to know, what have you accomplished? What are you working on? What are you doing? And stay plugged in to David and Infinity X. They're bringing amazing guests, and I'm honored that I get to be one of the few people that came back for a second one.
God, now we got to start planning the third, Susan. It just keeps getting better and better. I mean, man, it's unbelievable. Folks, we are Infinity X. This is Susan Sly, susansly.com. She is up to massive things, and so are we. Replay at weareinfinityx.com. If you'd like to have a conversation with us around planning or any of the things that you heard about tonight, epicfinancialstrategies.com, or hit me on a DM on Instagram at David Harder at weareinfinityx. Susan, you are the best. I can't thank you enough. Hey, good luck with the closing tonight too. Sounds like you got a couple of choices, right?
My realtor texted me, we have an all cash offer coming in, and I'm not afraid to disclose this. It goes back to, I can't sit here and say things that I'm not doing myself. And, by the grace of God, we put a lot of money in this house, and, it's a good number, and we have, one kid who's graduated university, one is at university, one who's headed to university, and then one left. And I'm like, I said to my husband, who's a CPA, I'm like, this is such a good time for us to do this because, you know, you don't have to live, we live in a really beautiful house and we're very blessed, but you don't have to live in the nicest house or drive a Bentley or whatever. Now is not, and even look at the cost of used cars. We could have talked about that for 30 minutes. Look at how much things cost right now, my friends, and say to yourself, if I can downsize, if I can drive this truck a little bit longer and I could take that money, pay off my debt, work with David, invest really smartly, what will my life look like in a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now?
Unbelievable. Folks, drop the mic with that. If you want to catch her at susansly.com. We are infinityx.com. We are thrilled to continue to bring high-level content. And Susan, always, it's an honor and a privilege. Thank you for sharing some time with us tonight.
Thanks, David. And thanks, everyone. It was great to be here. And I look forward to connecting. If you're interested in the incubator, you can always just message me at info@susansly.com. And I'd love to tell you more as soon as we get the link live.
Slides.com, folks, for the incubator. Susan, I'll talk to you soon. I look forward to it. And folks, again, this is We Are Infinity X, signing off for another Tuesday. Susan, thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.